Can you be detained for a crime that hasn't happened yet? Let's find out. Today's auditor is known by the name of SGV News First. Some of you requested that I take a look at this channel, so I did, and I found some interesting things. The first thing I noticed is that he live streams a lot of traffic stops and police activity. The second thing I noticed was that he doesn't really have a clear grasp on what the police do. The third thing I noticed was that I had actually saved a video of him getting things wrong ages ago to discuss on this channel, which I then lost among all the other videos that I had saved of other auditors. Yeah, a lot of them get stuff wrong. We won't be looking at that video today, but if you like this one, leave a comment down below encouraging me to discuss the other video, and we'll see what happens. Remember, I don't earn any money off of this channel. That might change in the future, but for now, all I have is your support. And as long as I think people are interested in learning about this stuff, I'm going to keep teaching it to you. We start with a police officer approaching SGV and another auditor, known as Whittier Watch. The officer immediately detains them and states that he's investigating a burglary. He also states that nobody has broken a law yet. Well, that doesn't really make sense, right? How can he detain someone for a crime that hasn't happened? Before I get into that, let me explain why SGV and Whittier are detained. From what I can gather in this 8-minute video, the police department allegedly received a call that 2 men with cameras and flashlights were acting suspiciously outside of a Home Depot and were believed to be engaged in the act of planning or conducting a burglary. So, the officer detained the 2 auditors to investigate, which the auditors did not take well at all. Ugh. To detain someone, the police need something called reasonable suspicion. Now, the beautiful thing about reasonable suspicion is that the suspicion doesn't have to be that a crime is occurring or has occurred. It can also be based on the idea that a crime is about to occur. So, yes, the officer had every right to detain the 2 men based on the suspicion that they're about to burgle. But is that suspicion really reasonable? Let's check out the situation. They're both wearing dark clothes, making them difficult to see at night, and which is obscuring the identity of at least one of them. They're in an area that doesn't appear to be heavily trafficked at night. They're taking pictures of something that people wouldn't normally take pictures of. The thing they're taking pictures of contains many valuable items. Thieves often take pictures of or film a building prior to breaking into it. If you've ever heard of the term casing a joint, you're familiar with this. Without any other information, which the officers likely wouldn't have had either, that seems pretty indicative of potential criminal activity, which is why the detention occurred to get more information. Now, fortunately for the 2, they had some good excuses, although they didn't really do a good job explaining them, choosing instead to insult the officers. Let's do what they didn't and give explanations for their suspicious nature. The temperature in the area that they were in on the day that this occurred was between 42 and 64 degrees Fahrenheit, which is cold enough that a hoodie is appropriate. They weren't filming the Home Depot, they were actually filming the nearby Southern California Edison building, which honestly isn't really much better. Also keep in mind that the Home Depot was here, and the Edison building was here, and they were detained here. So it wasn't clear to the officer, absent clarifying information, which building they would have been filming. Now, I know not talking to the police can be a pretty good idea, but when you're innocent of a suspected crime, giving this sort of information can help lessen the amount of time you're detained. Now, of course, SGV and friend didn't do that, so their detention lasted approximately 8 minutes. Could have been shorter. All you had to do was cooperate. Based on my own experience responding to suspicious individuals, I believe it's possible that whoever reported them didn't even give a specific building, and there does seem to be some credibility to that theory. When asked what building they were supposedly burglarizing, the officer hesitates before pointing to the Home Depot, making me think that the 911 call was just someone saying,
"Well, these guys are definitely planning to rob somewhere. They're taking pictures of the big building on South Marengo Street and looking all suspicious and stuff."
The officer was facing the Home Depot and could have thought, assuming that my theory about the call is correct, that that was the big building that the hypothetical caller was talking about. Yes, I'm putting forth an unproven hypothesis regarding what happened, but if SGV gets to do it on his live streams, why not me? Finally, the auditors weren't casing the joint. they were just filming to exercise their First Amendment rights, or possibly just to generate views on a YouTube channel to acquire money. Another officer and a supervisor arrived, checked out the situation, decided that no criminal activity was being conducted, and everyone dispersed. Just another example of police doing their job appropriately in a non-tyrannical way, although SGV certainly didn't seem to think so. Let's take a look at some other issues involving SGV and Whittier. Whittier keeps his hands in his pockets during the detention, which is a pretty big no-no. The officer notices this and tells Whittier to show his hands, to which Whittier responds, "You gonna make me or what? Are you serious?" Now, you all know that he can absolutely make Whittier take the hands out of his pockets, right? And it wouldn't be unreasonable for him to escalate to some sort of pain compliance or the threat of some sort of pain compliance because he's outnumbered and might suspect that Whittier's holding a weapon, right? Especially considering how antagonistic these guys are. Yes? Ugh! When Whittier keeps repeating that it's none of the officer's business what's in his pocket, the officer prepares to draw his gun. Again, that's not unreasonable, because it's not uncommon for people engaging in criminal behavior, which is still what's being investigated at this point, by the way, to be carrying items to defend themselves with. And the fact that Whittier isn't willing to show the officer what's in his pocket is real suspicious. There are plenty of examples of people unwilling to show what's in their pockets, drawing a gun and shooting the police. And if I were that officer, I would definitely be preparing for that possibility, especially considering the obvious dislike for police officers that these two men were demonstrating. Fortunately for Whittier, the officer realizes that he's just holding a stick to his camera and doesn't take any further action. Folks, I've seen auditors do a lot of stupid stuff, but this is definitely somewhere around the top of that list. The poor choices don't end here, though, because SGV decides to disregard the orders from one of the officers to stay where he is, choosing instead to walk down the sidewalk, yelling at the officer not to touch him. Honestly, at that point, I would have handcuffed him and sat him on the curb to stop him from making the investigation more difficult than it had to be, and I would have been justified to do so. One last thing before we wrap this up. The officer is struggling so hard to remain calm during this, and he's doing a great job. If any of you wonder why some officers are angry all the time, it's because of people like SGV. Imagine dealing with this kind of person every day for 20 years. Want nicer cops? Be better people. That's it for today. Remember, if you want me to do that second video on SGV, let me know down in the comments. And until the next time, be good, stay safe. Those both look pretty good. Might want to check them out. Maybe not. Up to you. I certainly wouldn't mind if you did. But until the next time, well, you already heard all that.